Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, Leanne.
Thank you.
So I interviewed Leanne a little over a month ago. It was the end of August for our cover story of the Most Powerful Women issue. And in the 3-4 weeks since, Boeing has scored more than up to $10 billion in deals, just in about a month's time, beating out Lockheed Martin and other competitors. Leanne, what has it taken to execute like that? I mean, are you sleeping on the factory floor? What's going on?
Well, it's been just such an amazing time, but I have to be really honest with you all. So sitting out here in the audience and listening, I mean, the lady who is developing the cure for Alzheimer's was up here. You know, the two women who are taking on the travesty in Charlottesville, Madam President, who just left. I'm kind of thinking I need to work a little bit harder. I'm really feeling I'm feeling very inadequate right now. So we had a great trifecta of wins, but it's really all about customer first and people always. And our teams have been working on these complex weapon systems for over a decade. And so this was, I'm just so am blessed to have such a great team, and I'm so excited for everyone. Not only is this creating generations of jobs for the future in technology and for Boeing employees and for our supplier teammates and partners around the world, but more importantly, this is creating weapon systems for our customers for generations to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that it's taken, you know, these things are a long time coming. It's a long cycle, and yet I know you keep on your desk or right by your desk the 2018 National Defense Strategy that Defense Secretary Mattis has put out. And in it, he says something interesting. He says, you know, one of the things we need to do better is deliver performance at the speed of relevance, which I think basically means we need to be faster to market with these technologies and be updating more quickly so we always have, you know, the best technology that's out there. What is Boeing's role in helping to achieve that goal? How does that impact your job?
Well, first and foremost, you know, I'll be really honest. We want to make it an unfair fight. Our men and women who are serving on the front line every day, making sure that we're safe so that we can sit in conferences and have conversations, they deserve the very best technology that is out there. They deserve it at an affordable price. They deserve it quickly, and it needs to be relevant, not just for the fight for today, but for the fight a decade from now. And so as an industry, a technology industry, it is about making certain we're anticipating and using the guidance that the Secretary of Defense puts out in terms of where the country is heading and how our allied nations are working together, but making certain that we are anticipating and bringing forward ideas rapidly at the best possible price.
So you basically just have to work even harder.
After today, I have to really go work a lot harder. I don't know about anybody else.
So something that the administration is scared to talk about, you know, kind of unexpectedly, was the idea of a space force. And, you know, sometimes there was a little bit of skepticism around that. You know, people didn't quite take it seriously necessarily. I saw it on some of the late night comedy shows. But, you know, you have a better understanding maybe than almost anybody out there in terms of what's really at stake. I mean, and you've talked about the idea of contested space. What does that really mean? I mean, what are we up against here?
Well, what is very refreshing about this administration, and I think it's imperative for all of us to know, these great devices you all are holding in your hands right now with the GPS satellites, you know, it only takes some activity up in space to take out a GPS satellite if it is not protected, if it's not resilient, if there's not a backup system, and it will literally alter our lives as we know it. We won't be able to get to where we need to go. For some of us, we won't know exactly where we are. But more importantly than that, I'm not saying it's me, but we'll just leave it at that. But more importantly, that is when you think about the precision engagement that our servicemen and women use in terms of getting to where they need to be in order to enter into whatever conflict or humanitarian mission is needed, these are some of the basic principles that allow us to guide it. And so making certain that we understand that space has been a presumption that is uncontested, that space, that there's this rule that there would never be warfare in space, but the reality is our adversaries are very keen on what's happening in space, and so
satellites.
Exactly, and so having the administration be willing to talk about it, and I think you heard the Secretary of the Air Force, Heather Wilson, say it last year. It's a conversation we've been needing to have, and it is a reality of the world we live in.
Yeah, are those risks or the threats? I mean, to our satellites, is it spying? Is it, are we talking about cybersecurity or physical security? What are we, what's out there?
It's all domains, and that's why you'll hear the word resilience used to make certain that whatever the threat to whatever the system is, whether it's seabed, ground, air, or space, that there are ways in which maneuvers, techniques, or alternate systems that are out there that can ensure continuity of operations, continuity of government.
Yeah, and Boeing is producing some of those new technologies to help us with that. I know some of these are classified stuff. What can you talk about?
What I want to.
Okay.
This is cool.
Yeah,
it's
this is
fun.
Well, another fun topic for some people, I think it's been in the news just this summer. There's been a debate going on. Now that we have such advanced technologies such as AI and automation, how should we be using those new technologies in the name of national security? We saw Google withdraw recently from a Pentagon project after some of their employees resigned over this. But I'm curious, so if we opt out, if the U.S. opts out, if we don't put our best foot forward in terms of technology, if we don't, utilize the most cutting-edge technology in AI for the purpose of national security, what will happen?
Well, I think you are honing in on a conversation we had last night at dinner. And so this, again, goes back to ensuring that the men and women who are on the front line, and the front line comes in a lot of different forms, whether it's through autonomous operations, whether it's through engagement with space assets, whether it's pilots going into other territories and executing a mission, or long-range bombers, whatever it may be. The reality is, if we for a minute think that our adversaries aren't always trying to be better, quicker, and smarter than we are, we're fooling ourselves. And so we have an obligation to make certain that we are continuing to provide that technology to make certain that it is, again, the best way I can say it is that it's an unfair fight, and an unfair fight in our advantage.
So if we don't do it, we run the risk somebody else will.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Are there any questions from the audience right now? See any hands?
That is so good.
I have one. All right. But speaking of our adversaries, what are some of those big technologies that we're really trying to stay ahead of the curve on? What are our adversaries have now that didn't used to be possible that we really need to make sure?
Well, let's just talk about technology in general versus whether it's about specific adversaries or not. When you think about autonomous, and we heard some conversations on it this morning, and I like to kind of put it in fairly simple terms because I'm a simple person. Think about the Jetsons. How many of you all remember the Jetsons cartoon, right? We think it's kind of funny, but think about that. They had spaceways, not highways. They were literally using technology to their advantage to make their life simpler and to come up with different ways to execute their day. And it was no big deal for them to be flying autonomously around, and as Secretary Chow said this morning, in a very safe environment. That is where we're going. I still remember when I took the tram at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. How many of you all took the engineering experiment at the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport about 20 years ago? And you'd get on the train, and somewhere between concourse A and C, you would decide it's just faster to walk because you weren't sure you were going to make it all the way. And now you can get from A to D, and you all go hang in D because that's where the best shops and the restaurants are, and it's all okay. But we don't even mind getting on it now. We don't even think twice about getting on a monorail. Think about what we're doing up in Seattle, everywhere around the world.
Technology.
It's just going to continue to accelerate, and we need to stay in front of it. Boeing is one of those companies where we're at the nexus. We have the ability to continue to innovate, and as you think about who is going to help produce autonomous transportation, we are going to be at the centerpiece of that.
Yeah. Question over here, please.
Hi, Leanne.
Hello.
Tell us who
How
you
are
are.
you? My favorite customer. So, Eileen, Airjet Rocketdyne.
Eileen is wonderful, by the way, y'all. She's Airjet Rocketdyne. She is absolutely spectacular.
Thanks, Leanne. So, Leanne, you run a huge portfolio at Boeing, and within that portfolio, how do you create an environment for innovation, the type of innovation you need for disruptive technologies like your Phantom Express, one of my favorite programs that's soon to take aircraft-like operations to space launch transportation?
It's a great question because we're a 100-year-old company, actually 102 years old. And so I don't know if any of you all are in large, big companies where you have 140,000 people. You can be a little bit more slow and deliberate. That's how we like to view it versus saying that we're old school, right? The reality is we need to be innovative and we need to be moving with speed every day, and we need to be constantly bringing in new ideas. We do it a couple of different ways, and I'm real excited about Phantom Express. We're going to be able to launch small satellites 10 times in 10 days at a tenth of the price of a normal rocket launch. So that's a very disruptive technology. We do it a number of ways. I have actually an organization called Phantom Works that is literally focused on innovative technologies where we are advancing the technology readiness levels, and we do it in a very inclusive environment so that we can really make certain that those folks have not only the best in terms of the technology that's available to them, but they have it's a different culture and a slightly different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And then at the bigger company level, we actually have a venture capitalist arm of the Boeing company called Horizon X. And this is where we actually go invest in small companies, a lot of seeds that we really operate as a little venture capitalist in many areas, and then we look for ways to partner together. So we have a number of avenues to do it.
Yeah, another question here, please.
Hi, Sheeta Bina from Insigniam. Leanne, I always find I love your style, and I'm going to switch the conversation for a moment to a conversation we had at dinner last night about leadership and the difference between being kind and being nice. And how important that is. And it's so obvious being with you that you're your own authentic self, so you don't try to be, some kind of archetype female version of a male engineer kind of thing. So
there are so many things why that would never work for me.
So I would love to hear more about that, because it was clear that struck a chord with you.
It did. I'm going to tell you all the truth. I'm not certain. My mother has been the greatest blessing in the world to me because she taught me grace. And it's win with grace and lose with grace. I mean, that's just kind of how we were brought up. And I recognize in this business environment that we're not always going to be popular. We are going to have to make hard decisions. We are going to leave some folks either upset or unsatisfied. And the reality is that how can we do it in a way that still not only has the authentic nature of who we are, but that you also don't lose the compassion and the empathy for folks. And it's the definition of kind and nice. And they're two very different definitions. And being nice, no, this is going to be terrible. I'm going to make being nice sound like a bad thing. Being nice is about being overt and doing something for someone else. Being kind is really just an inner part of who you are in terms of putting other people forward. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I am not nice. I always want to be kind. And I think if that is the only thing folks remember about me, I think that would be a great life. Thank you.
Leanne, your boss, Dennis Muhlenberg, has said that right now is the best time, maybe the best environment for defense contractors that he's encountered in his entire career. What are you most excited about in terms of new technology and just the possibility that are on the horizon, maybe literally?
Well, I think, and I'll be brief, I'm a product of my parents met at the company actually in the factory that built the Saturn V rocket right outside New Orleans, Louisiana, and it's actually one of my factories now. And so I'm literally walking through the factory with my team, and I go to the restroom, and I think to myself, my mom went to the restroom here when she started with the company. And it made me realize that the only thing that limits us is our imagination. So let's just not lose our imagination. And I mean, look at these incredible women that were standing up here on the stage today. I could only hope to be half as inspirational as they are. They're just phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.